السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا وسهلا ومرحبا بكم. It has been a very long time since I've made a video, but today I wanted to respond to people's dismay in the world, allegedly with God for for allowing, they say, earthquakes, wars, death, destruction, etc. So, there's the typical argument made by people who don't believe in a God, atheists, that if there really was a God, then why would he allow so much death and destruction? Children die in earthquakes, wars take place. Why doesn't God just stop that from happening? Why does it happen? Now, one way to answer that question is by highlighting the fact that there is free will. Free will, okay? So the idea in religion, in the Abrahamic religions, in Islam and to some extent in Christianity, is that there is sort of a deficit in equalizing the effects that result from our actions in the world. So what does that mean? Okay. So when God created man, he gave man an intellect, okay? And he told him that he should use this intellect in his service. And by this, he was able to discriminate, meaning differentiate between one thing and another thing, and also give these things names. And language evolved, and ideas and abilities improved, and also a ability to harness nature to the benefit and the comforts of man. But with this happening, the fact that it's not only one man who has free will, but it's many people who have free will, everyone has free will, you have a clash of wills. You have a clash of wills. And in having a clash of wills, you have chaos. And with chaos, you have war and destruction and death. And so what sort of tempered this free will was God sending prophets and messengers to teach people how best to use this free will in such a way that is going to be mutually beneficial to everyone, technically, if everyone could obey, okay? But because everyone will not obey, there will be a tug of war between those who are trying to follow the heavenly ordinances, which bring about peace and order and security, and those who just want to follow their instincts, instant gratification, their pleasure, and live hedonistic lifestyles, right? Would obviously now play off against each other, and then this is why you have war. So I think I've answered the question of why you have war. What about natural disasters? What insurance companies would call acts of God. What about that? Okay. Now, in the religions, the monotheistic religions, we believe that God has all wisdom, that God is all wise, and that God's wisdom cannot be comprehended because because it's God, after all, who is omnipotent, and so because we have limited faculties of understanding, we are not able to comprehend God's wisdom in its entirety, but we can know something of the wisdom of God, and so I'm going to give you a bit of a sort of a demonstration. So you could have, for example, let's say you have an earthquake, okay, and in this earthquake, many people die. And of course, it's a tragedy, and of course, we feel sad and despair because of that, and that's a normal human reaction. But when we look at it from the perspective of believers for sort of natural disaster, we ask ourselves that as a community in this region, as a people, what have we done? What sort of lives have we lived? To perhaps bring on wrath. We could see it as God's wrath. Okay, God has now decided to bring about this earthquake, perhaps to eradicate a people who were evil. So there's that sort of notion. So the story that immediately comes to mind is of Sodom and Gomorrah and brimstones, for example. So that was now in response to a group of people who were practicing sodomy. So there's that aspect of disasters that are natural, okay? Then there's also the aspect of knowing that the one who gave you life, i.e. God, has the right to take it away when he deems fit, because it's God. And whether that means that you will die in a car accident or in an earthquake or in a plane crash, or whichever way you die, believers also know that their time of death has been written. And so death is not something to fear. Rather, the fear that believers have is of living a life that is without God, living a life without faith, living an improper life, living a life with ill conduct and sin. And that is really rather the mainstay of the concern of the believers, and not how and when they will die. Okay? And there's wisdom in that, because if you're going to live your whole life fearing how and when and where you will die, you will live in a state of immense insecurity. You will live in a state of almost paranoia, more than fear, in fact, because you'll be too scared to really do anything, because you might die. Okay, now I'm not saying that the believers are to be reckless with their lives and not take precaution against being harmed or against what could possibly lead to their death in the natural world as per cause and effect. But there is a relationship in faith between cause and effect and the will and decree of God. There's a relationship between them. So the faith-based system does not see things merely in terms of cause and effect, but between cause and effect, you can say there is sort of the power of God, the hand of God. And so to conclude the issue with free will, I want to say that why sin is considered sin, it's considered bad, it's considered evil, going against the commandments of God, is because we cannot act on our own with our own power. So in other words, whatever we do as creatures is through the power of God. And since we have free will, we are exercising by our agency of free will the power that was given to us by God. So it's God's power. So when we do wrong things, we are utilizing the power of God incorrectly, okay, in a way that it displeases God. And so that is why it is grievous actually to act wrongly, because you are not just acting, in a sense you are both an actor in the world, okay, but you are acting through the borrowed agency, in a sense, power, if you will, of God Himself. So if you look at it that way, you can sort of wrap your head around why it is so bad to be bad, because you're not just being bad by yourself, okay, because there is no power outside of God, so nothing is able to act by itself, by and in and of itself. Otherwise there would be two gods, and there isn't. There's only one God. And so we are given sort of that leeway, right, to exercise our free will within the limitations that God has set. So for example, yes, I have free will. Yes, I can choose to do things, but I can only really choose between A or B. Okay? So I can choose whether to walk or whether to sit. But I can't decide that I'm going to, without the help of an airplane, I'm suddenly going to take off and fly. Because that now is beyond the scope of what I'm allowed within the range of free will. Okay? And so in essence, free will is, a lot of people unfortunately view free will as being outside of the power of God, but that's an impossibility. Okay, free will is part of the agency and power of God, and in a sense part of the will of God, or the decree of God. Because you cannot do more evil, for example, even when you do evil, you cannot do more evil than what is possible to do. So let's say, for example, murder is evil. Okay? You cannot kill someone more dead than they're already dead. Okay? Once you've killed someone, because murder is evil and you murdered someone, that is the extent to which it can go, that you've murdered the person. You cannot murder the person more dead than being dead, for example. Okay? There's a limited range of possibilities of evil, because evil is also a decree of God, meaning that God decreed that within the realm of possibility. Because if it was not within the realm of possibility, there wouldn't be free will. If I can only do good, then there's no free will. The fact that I can choose between doing good and bad, and I can do good and bad, this is an exercise of my free will. And then this begets, because people ask me later on when they're after this conversation usually runs this way, is heaven and hell real? Well, because there's free will, and because you are doing actions, right, through the agency or power of God, but you are doing it, there is the possibility of reward and punishment. Now, this is actually a more easier concept to understand, because in life, in this physical world, we experience reward and punishment all the time based on what we do. If you eat donuts every day, okay, and sit on the couch all day, you will experience getting fat, or getting diabetic, or getting, any number of diseases associated with that. That is the punishment for sitting all day eating donuts every day, right? If you exercise regularly and you experience good health and a better quality of life, that is the reward for exercising regularly, exercising every day. So the concept of reward and punishment is known. And the last thing I want to add, so of course if you do good, the general narrative is if you do good and your good deeds are such that it's acceptable to God and He decides to enter you into paradise, you'll go to paradise. And if you do bad and your bad is excessive, and God does not choose to, through His mercy, put you into paradise, then you may go to hell, and that will be the reward or your compensation for what you've done. And this is an important concept in religion also, because it does denote a delayed, like I said in the beginning, a delayed gratification or delayed consequence. And this is the day of evening out, the day of making up for debt. Yawm al-Din, the day of judgment, is essentially a day where the scores will be settled. Okay? So the idea is that you work and work and work and work, and because good is self-sacrificing, painful, difficult experience. To be good is not easy in the world, because the world is a test, right? Finally, you will see the fruits of your labor, okay, in a delayed way. Okay, this is why it's called akhirah. Al-akhirah. What is the akhirah? Akhiran, finally, eventually, okay, there's a delay. Okay. Now, why is this important? Because it also explains the chaos of the world. Okay. Because the debts are not settled here in its entirety. Okay. That which is outstanding of debt is settled on the day of judgment. So you will see the full fruits of either your good or bad on the day of judgment. And we do have a semblance of that in the world. So this idea of delayed gratification, which is very much a concept of religion, Stoicism, enlightenment, all have this concept of delayed gratification. And Islam also. The idea is that when you persevere to accomplish something, the reward for that thing is greater, because that is the nature of existence. So a person who, for example, perseveres for 7 years to become a doctor gives up various things, gives up partying, gives up drinking, gives up casual relationships, gives up going out and hanging with friends, gives up so many things to focus on accomplishing a goal which is now going to take 7 years. Finally, when that person accomplishes that goal and becomes a doctor and works and opens his own surgery and earns a lot of money and helps a lot of sick people get better, that person in 7-8 years' time is better off than his peers who didn't believe in the akhirah. In other words, in this sense, this is a microcosm of the concept. Okay? He didn't believe in the akhirah. He wasn't willing to sacrifice 7 years of his life to finally reap the reward of becoming a doctor. So his peers, maybe 7 years down the line, at 26 years old, his peers are working at Starbucks, working at McDonald's, struggling, partying, doing drugs, and this guy is already an accomplished doctor. Why? Because he believed in the akhirah, al-akhirah, what came later. He endured, right, to reap the benefit of what comes after. And so the concept of akhirah, life after death, Jannah and Jahannam, heaven and hell, it is within our purview. We actually do understand it in life in general. So I hope I covered those topics and that it makes sense. Thank you very much.